Good Super Monday, Birds fans. It is the official Super Bowl week, and we'll be talking about the lead up to Super Bowl 57 all week here on Birds 365. Eagles, Chiefs in Arizona come next Sunday. And oh, by the way, the Birds have landed, Johnny Mac. All the Eagles on a big old jet plane got out to Arizona yesterday to prep for the Super Bowl. And it is a little bit different than basically any other week. There are bye weeks in the National Football League, but teams do not get into town a week in advance of an
No.
upcoming game until you are playing in the biggest game of all, the Super Bowl. And you were around them all last week. The Eagles seem pretty well adjusted and prepared for a different week than a lot of them have ever faced before.
Yeah, it is different, and that's why, Nick Sirianni's been pretty steady throughout this whole process. Everything stays the same week one to Detroit, all the way up to the NFC Championship game. You can do that, basically. You can do that, but you can't do it in Super Bowl week because all of it is different. And as you mentioned, you're in there 1 week early. Go back to Super Bowl 52. Alshon Jeffrey had a great interview about that, wishing he could come into the game on like a normal week, Saturday. Like me, I'll be going in late for the game, but they got to go through all this rigmarole during the week. Starts with the photo ops of the planes landing and at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, and it kicks off from there. And it is different, and everything down to the game, because you have the Super Bowl halftime show, which is such a big deal now. So it's much longer halftime than usual. Everything about this game is different. So you can talk about everything being the same, but it's just not.
And they'll be prepared because I think Nick Sirianni's done a good job all year. He has prepared them for this moment, not necessarily the Super Bowl, but just the fact that that's what you're paid to do, is adjust. That not everything, you like to keep everything the same and as structured as possible, and then spit happens, and then you have to be able to adjust and do things differently and do them on the fly. And for a lot of the Eagle players, they're how many, 6 or 7 guys, including a guy like Greg Ward, who's on the practice squad both times.
Yeah.
There's a handful of guys that have experience in it from just 5 years ago when the Eagles won the championship. That means there are a whole lot of guys that have never been through this before, so they're doing it and learning it on the fly as they go. But they seem like a pretty smart bunch and a pretty controlled bunch. So I just get the feeling, and maybe this is me with Eagle-colored glasses on, I don't think the fact that it is such a different week from anything else they've ever done before, I don't think it's going to have all that adverse an effect on this team.
No, I don't really look at that kind of stuff as anything that's going to cost you a game or anything of that nature. I never look at it that much, but I do think there's a sort of adjustment period, but that can happen in a regular season game. You might have some hiccups early in the game, but once you get into the guts of the game, everybody tends to settle down. Then it becomes, who's going to play better on that particular game day. So I don't want to overstate it, but it is different. The Eagles have kind of mentioned, the last 2 years in the draft, they've kind of gone, Alabama centric and then Georgia centric, and those guys have played in every bit as big as a game at that level, because it is that big, and so maybe that helps a little bit as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. That's not gonna decide this game, because Kansas City's in their third Super Bowl in 4 years. They're not just gonna roll out the footballs and say, "Oh, Kansas City's been here before." In fact, you could spin it the other way. And, Patrick Mahomes, we all know how good he is and how good he's been. Hasn't played well in Super Bowls. Maybe there's pressure on him because the microscope is that much larger. And, this is the greatest passer rating of all time, who kind of not so much in Super Bowls. So maybe that creeps into his mind. So you can look at it a lot of different ways.
I like your attempted spin on Mahomes. I'm not sure I buy it, but I like it. And yeah, he wasn't great in the Tampa game, but I cut him a whole bunch of slack there because their line was just absolutely decimated going into that game, and Tampa made his life a living heck. He didn't have one flat.
No, Shaq Barrett had a big game. Yeah, they lost their 2 tackles. You and I talked about that on CBS. People don't look at the context of these things; they just kind of forget. But didn't play well against San Francisco either. From his typical, standard 78 passer rating against San Francisco, pretty much played poorly for 3 quarters,
Right.
and then turned it on in the 4th quarter. So you have this, whatever his passer rating is, and our buddy Jeff Kerr put it up this morning. You can check out his Twitter account. It's the NFL's best in history, 106. In Super Bowls, it's under 70. So, you're right about the Tampa Bay game. The Tampa Bay game was unique because they lost one of their tackles in the championship game, in the AFC championship game, tore his ACL. And Mitchell Schwartz had been out for a while, but they didn't have either of their starting tackles. You rewind a year to San Francisco, though. No, they had no issues, and he didn't play well, at least compared to his usual standards.
Except, as you just stated, he played well in the 4th quarter and won the football game, which kind of overshadows his ineffectiveness for the first 3 games. And sorry, Eagle fans, but I'll go out on a limb on this one. I'm going to say he's going to have higher than a 70 passer rating in the Super Bowl. Just a shot I'm going to take here.
That's a good prop bet. I would go over as well.
You would go over 70, 75, somewhere there. But yeah, I think he'll probably do better.
You're going over 106, though. That to me is the key.
That's
is
true.
He over or under 106? That's his career passer rating. Right. I think he's under.
Well, then if we split the difference between 70 and 106, that's about 88, 90. That will be a key for me. If he's 108, then you might be in trouble. Eagles could very well lose the game. If he's in that 90, 95 range, that's probably where the game is going to lie. A close game that is decided late. Yeah, I was lucky enough to have John McMullen on my CBS show yesterday. And one of the things I asked him about was something we talked a little bit about here on Birds 365 last week, and that is being prepped for a game like this. The Super Bowl is different than any other bye week leading up to a return to the field. But Andy Reid has been so good in bye weeks, and it stretches all the way back here to his start in Philadelphia as a head coach. For his entire career, he's 28-3 leading into bye weeks. I gave you the little offspring of that when the other team, the team that he's playing, is also on a bye week, he's only 2-3. So the Eagles also coming in off a bye. But if you're worried about the Eagles being able to handle this off week, and not all that many guys have done it before, at least leading into a Super Bowl, Andy Reid has. This is his 4th Super Bowl. A whole bunch of players on the Kansas City Chiefs have. This is their 3rd Super Bowl in the last 4 years. If the Eagles win this game, it's not going to be because Kansas City isn't prepped for it, Johnny.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, you and I talked about that. That's a huge sample size, 28-3 coming off a bye week. And, the smaller sample size of not being successful when both teams are coming off a bye, Super Bowl would be an indication of that, is not as important to me because it's a small sample size. And that's why I brought up that Tampa game to you on the radio. People forget it gets lost in history. What was going on at that moment? Kansas City was really up against it. If you were a sharp, as my buddy, the Billy Godfather, likes to say on the betting markets, you could have taken advantage of that situation because everybody thinks Kansas City's the better team, but they're all banged up. It's so important. I talk about all the time. If you can block people, you can score on anybody in this league. First-ranked defense, San Francisco. Second-ranked defense, Philadelphia. You can score on anybody if you can block people. The flip side of that is if you can't block people, you're in trouble. And because of the injuries, they couldn't block people. That to me is contextual, very important. So those small sample sizes, they don't matter. You can throw them out. But 28-3, that tells you, all right, this team's going to be prepared. This team is going to be ready to go. They're going to do everything possible. They're going to do everything the right way. And it's not going to be the New York Giants. It's not going to be the San Francisco 49ers with Brock Purdy and Josh Johnson. This is going to be, if you win the Super Bowl, you're going to earn it. That's what this game is going to be.
Yeah, the best team in the NFC against the best team in the AFC. That's the way it's supposed to work out. And I think that's what we have right here. Both number one seeds, both with the best records in their respective conferences for the regular season. And they both have advanced to Super Bowl number 57. All right, Johnny Mac, you did mention the 49ers. I want to get this in before we punch up our first guest, which will be our buddy Mike Missinelli, who had a weekend off, wasn't down at Oceans prepping for an Eagles post-game show. No, he, like Andy Reid and the Philadelphia Eagles and everyone else associated with the game, had a week off to prepare and get ready. So we're going to punch Mikey Miss up coming up in just a couple of minutes. In the rearview mirror is that win over the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game, except some of the 49ers won't let it go. Brandon Ayuik this weekend. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to shred that Eagle defense. The Eagles were lucky to beat us. It was all about our guys being here. The Eagles were the better team last week. I said that ahead of time. I said it after the game. Was there some luck involved in the game? Yeah, the Eagles got a little lucky that the camera angle that showed that Devonta Smith actually dropped the football wasn't seen early enough for them to challenge. Good on the Eagles hustling up and snapping the ball quickly, so it didn't happen, but there's a little luck involved there. Brock Purdy getting hurt on his fifth pass of the game. There's a little luck involved here. 24 points of luck? I don't think so, Brandon. The better football team won the game. It's time to move on to 2023, not live in the sour grapes past that the Eagles are playing in this game and your 49ers aren't.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of it had to do with the quarterback getting hurt. But again, I mean, it was a clean hit. It was a legal hit. And that's, a good pass rush by a good player. So that factors into it as well. I don't even consider, look, you fight all year to get the number one seed. Guess what? If you're at home and there's a bang, bang play, they're not going to show the best angle on the scoreboard in Stadium Kyle Shanahan. So you got to do something. I don't consider that luck. I've said that from point one, and I'm a big Kyle Shanahan guy when it comes to play calling, play scheming. I'm not a big Kyle Shanahan guy when it comes to game management. There are numerous things you can do. You can call timeout. I said you don't use them anyway, because you have 4 delay of game penalties. You can call timeout. You can wait. You can wait and see. Maybe they take a look at it. The NFL's going to the sky judge sort of deep back, though. They won't admit, but they're doing it. And they keep looking at these plays in New York, and maybe they come up with the right angle. Maybe they overturn the play. I blame that completely on the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. The fact that you think, the Eagles at Lincoln Financial, we're going to put up the immediate broadcast of Devonta Smith not catching that football. Stop. That's what you're doing. If it were in Santa Clara, the 49ers would have done the same thing. If they had the angle, they would have put it up for everybody to see immediately. That's what home field advantage is. So that part, I don't even give 10 seconds of thought. That's all on the head coach. All on the head coach. Should have called timeout. Should have thrown the red challenge flag. Should have done something. Again, he doesn't use his timeouts anyway, so who cares if you lose a timeout? Now, the part about the quarterback getting hurt, it was only 6 plays. But I think that play where Brock Purdy got injured was an indication why the Eagles were not going, why the 49ers were not going to win that game. Would have been closer. But guess what? It's a play action. That's the Shanahan offense. You're trying to fool the defense. A veteran quarterback knows that's been in this scheme, and this scheme's been around forever. With Kyle's dad, Gary Kubiak, so many teams use it right now. Part of that play is the quarterback has to know there is a situation where a potential pass rusher could be bearing down on you, and you have to get rid of the football. Now, a rookie quarterback is not going to know as much as a 13, 14-year veteran. That's part of it. That's part of what happened. But guess what? That wasn't changing. Even if he scraped himself off the floor, that kind of savviness is not going to happen. They were not going to win that football game. Now, NFL football is very emotional. You see it with the fans. Brandon Ayuik is upset. He's upset they lost the game. And he thinks they lost the game because they lost their quarterback. They lost the game. They were going to lose the game anyway. They were, Jody.
That's the way I saw it, and the whole complaining about not showing the picture on the big screen down at Lincoln Financial Field.
Ridiculous.
That's just ridiculously and asinine. That was a pretty stupid statement by Shanahan. Could they have potentially, if they had taken the timeout, as you suggested, maybe seen the replay by the time they snapped the ball for the next play? Maybe. So, yes, I put it on Shanahan too, but even more so the idiotic stance of, well, they didn't get it up there on the Jumbotron fast enough. Stop it, coach. You're smarter than that. You knew that had no chance of happening whatsoever. Don't know what the date is, but we know that the San Francisco 49ers are coming back into Lincoln Financial Field again in 2023. Schedule is already out for next year, and because they both finished
might be some post-traumatic stress syndrome there for the 49ers. My God.
And or a little revenge. We'll see how it plays. But, Brandon, you've got all off the season to think about it, big guy. The Eagles are kind of busy this week. They've got a game against the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 57. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are the Mac Birds 365 guys. Our first guest of the week leading up to Super Bowl 57, starting off on the right foot, is our buddy Mike Missinelli from the JAKIB Media post-game show down at Oceans. That's where he'll be next Sunday. He's here with us. I'm